We think it's rather appropriate that Berserk's next chapter is coming out on Valentine's Day, because true strugglers know that this manga is a love story. However, the way things stand right now, it doesn't look like that love story is going to resume anytime soon, because as of this moment, the main goal of our protagonists isn't even fighting, it's trying to survive. In the middle of a war council that was supposed to help them find some direction in this new and dangerous world, humanity's defenders have been caught off guard. And to make matters worse, it looks like a God Hand member is bound to alight sooner rather than later. It's been a few months since the last chapter came out, so in this video we're going to give you a preview of Berserk Chapter 379 and remind you of the struggle that still lies ahead of us. Resurrected Assassin and Advent of Qliphoth, Rakshas versus Kushan Empire. It's downright haunting that ever since Miura-sensei passed away, all his characters have been drifting in a sea of despair that just threatens to suck them in with each passing chapter. Ever since Qliphoth showed up on Elfhelm, the good guys have been scrambling for the faintest ray of hope, and for a short period of time, it felt like they'd found it. After scrambling onto Roderick's ship and escaping the troubled waters of Skellig Island, which had been cleaved in half by Qliphoth's powers, the Black Swordsman party sailed pretty much aimlessly, which trying to piece itself back together. They had 3 immediate missions, 2 of which were essential to their survival. They needed to make landfall at a safe place to get their sick and wounded looked after. They needed to gather allies for the war against Qliphoth, which is now inevitable. And they needed to find out just where the hell he took Casca. Shirka got started on that last bit by projecting her luminous body into the dragon path represented by the world spiral tree, and call it luck or causality, but the remnants of the Kushan Empire took care of the first 2. Turns out, after escaping Falconia with Rickett and Daiba, Silat returned to his hidden village, then sailed back to his homeland. There, he rallied together the nobility that had been cast aside by Ganishka and mobilized the Kushan military to defend their empire from the Falcon's beaks and talons. Through a combination of magical and human intervention, the Kushan Empire managed to erect some sort of bulwark against the influence of the great tide of the astral world, because for the most part it was unaffected by the changes. The streets of the Kushan Empire were pretty free from the kind of bestial violence that covered every other place in the world apart from Falconia, and there is a possibility that there's a spirit tree somewhere deep within its heartland. Daiba has also recreated his Pishacha Ghana to combat the forces of the Falcon, so a combination of these 2 factors would be sufficient in keeping all other kinds of astral creatures at bay. And because Daiba is basically the strongest magician in the East, he also has the power to foretell things, which is how he and Silat come across the seahorse. Apparently, Roderick's crew had sailed all the way to the eastern half of the continent of Man, which is lucky for them because it's the only place where they will find soldiers willing to fight for the truth. But not even Daiba could have predicted that the God Hand would resurrect a damned soul to crush the resistance he'd worked so hard to build up. While he was explaining the exact set of circumstances that led to the world changing so drastically, the Kurultai Council, being chaired by the new Kushan Emperor, was ambushed by Rakshas. The Shadow Apostle untangled himself from the body of the Northern clan leader, who was on edge with the presence of the Bakiraka in this sacred discussion to begin with. He was trying to get the council to outlaw Silat because of his past, but his information and his Bakiraka have proven invaluable in the defense of the Empire from the Falcon's new world. He ends up getting told not to sow discord at a time when unity was of paramount importance, and that's when Rakshas attacks. He starts killing every person he can get his hands on, which, luckily for Silat, are just a few low-level council members and a few of his disguised assassins. He rushes the Emperor out of the council chamber under heavy guard and prepares to engage his clan's exile in one final confrontation. The brief respite that the Black Swordsman party found in the Kushan homeland, no matter how compromised, is now broken. The Empire's magical defenses have been shattered by an enemy powerful enough to summon the Qliphoth domain's dimensional gates, and trolls are running amok. The last true bastion of humanity finds itself in a crisis unlike any it has ever seen, and it's not looking good for our heroes. Sure, Silat, Daiba and Roderick have frontline access to the biggest problem in the room, Rakshas. They were attending the Kurultai, even Roderick's first mate, so they are the ones who can ensure that this apostle is the first and the last attempt to disturb Silat's homeland, but the rest of the squad is scattered all around the city, and fighting their way back to the castle is going to be extremely difficult. And you can double that sense of adversity, because with their two most important combatants out of commission, it's up to the side characters to handle this main act, with perhaps the most unlikely person serving as their spiritual anchor, the scattered forces of good and the unexpected. First line of defense. After landing on Kushan soil, the Black Swordsman party divided itself into about half a dozen distinct groups, the first of which were the decommissioned. Guts, following his utter defeat at the hands of Qliphoth in Elfhelm, is pretty much useless. He's become so weak because of his physical, emotional and mental issues that he's a rambling mess. The reason Silat and Daiba boarded his ship wasn't to rescue him, it was to restrain him, because their oracles had told them that something terrible was about to go down with the arrival of the Black Beast. Well, that something terrible is here, and Guts is in no shape to fight it, and neither is his best magic user, Shirka. The young mage entered the branches of the World Tree when they were still on the Seahorse, but several days have passed since then, and there is no sign of her return, save for that one time she showed up in Guts's unconscious mind and saved from being sucked into something. Daiba was thoroughly impressed by the fact that this kid could perform such a high-level arcane ritual, which made him request Silat for command over her and the Elfhelm mages. With them, his battle potential will be augmented, and he needs a helping hand because his current magic system is rooted in the same prana that powers the abyss. The Pishacha are called that because they're essentially familiars possessed by evil. In Hinduism, Pishacha is the name for evil spirits, and it's implied several times throughout the series that Daiba is basically fighting fire with fire. He uses his vast knowledge of the abyss to fight the abyss itself, but that worked out a lot better for him when he had the strongest apostle in the world as his patron. At least then, Daiba could control how his dark arts were being applied. Now, in the presence of the God Hand, who are basically walking, talking abyssal batteries, his magic was as good as useless. During Rakshas's assault, many of his elephant Pishacha charge into the castle and start killing Kushan soldiers. They're foaming at the mouth and their eyes are glazed over, as if someone has either poisoned them or overwritten their possession. We've seen Rakshas cause elephants to stampede before by covertly injecting them with poison in chapter 280 during the battle for Vritanis. It's possible that a similar thing is happening here, but Daiba specifically points out that the enchanted beasts are running rampant. That makes us think the cause is magical, not medicinal, and surely it's a godsend that he's at ground zero for Rakshas's arrival. While he's warning Silat, Roderick, and the rest of the soldiers to not underestimate the brute, seeing as killing 1,000 men was easy as cake for him. The other 4 units are busy trying to contain the damage on the outside. Before the Qliphoth convened, Serpico and Farnese headed back to the castle to check on Shirka. They're in a separate wing from the Qliphoth council chamber, so we can count them as a sub-unit of the palatial guard. Out on the streets, Isidro and Puck are taking a walk around the Kushan capital when trolls start swarming them. Rickett is escorting Magnifico around the city with an honor guard, which springs into defensive formation when the trolls show up. Rickett is wearing a rather determined look on his face, and something tells us he'll be just fine. The same should be said about the Magi from Elfhelm, who've been cornered by trolls from both sides of a street. But these guys are nowhere near being combat ready. The only one of them who has even a remote chance of standing up to them is playing terrified maid for her new friend, because Morda is trying to tend to Shirka, but the chaos within the city is kinda making her lose it a little. Gedfring is conspicuous by his absence, because he was with his students when they were walking around the capital, yet the last time we saw them, he was nowhere to be found. If there is one person who can help Daiba with the magical defenses of the Empire, it's Gedfring, and we expect him to show up and help out at some point during this whole fiasco. The characters we're most interested in are Serpico and Farnese, because for the first time, the latter is not shying away from her great power and responsibility as a witch. Before reaching Elfhelm and experiencing the Corridor of Dreams, Farnese kept feeling like she was useless, despite being the main reason that Guts could travel with Casca in the first place. Even when she cast her luminous body Farnese and the formation of the Four for the first time, she kept reminding herself just how small she was in this vast world of arcana. When Casca emerged from the corridor of dreams, that was the first time Farnese felt truly useful, but it was when the mages of Elfhelm accepted her as one of their own when she finally felt like she truly belonged. The results of this shift in perspective were noticeable almost immediately. When Qliphoth arrived on Elfhelm, he nearly swallowed Shirka's luminous body whole with his immense ode. Farnese somehow managed to anchor her and bring her back, after which she worked overtime on the seahorse, tending to the wounded. Now she is confident in becoming the magical shield of her comrades, because she finally has faith in herself. Farnese has already picked up OD sensing to such a refined degree that not only does she know where the trolls are attacking, she can also tell where the epicenter of the Qliphoth manifestation lies. She rushes there with Serpico, who kills a bunch of trolls with the Sylph sword and asks her what the plan is. She tells him about the epicenter, but something tells us that's not where she's headed. When Qliphoth opened the first time, Shirka's power did not close it, and she acknowledged this pretty openly. With her spirit still wandering the world tree's branches, Farnese says it's up to her to make sure. In chapter 377, right after she says this, the scene transitions to Guts in his cell, where he's convulsing from his condition and his imprisonment, but at the same time is pissed off that an apostle is in the capital. Farnese becoming the first line of defense is about as unexpected gets. Her actions will form the basis for the Kushan Empire's counterattack, and that's wild considering she started off this journey as a murderous heretic hunting religious fanatic. But if she isn't going to close the portal, then what is she going to do? To us, it feels like the answer is obvious. She will free Guts and attempt to merge with his OD as he enters the Berserker armor. Farnese only wants one other person more powerful than her own mistress, and we're confident that her love for him might actually allow her to pull him back to his senses a little bit better than Shirka. Alternatively, she could also be headed for the Great Gurus, because she knows by now that their knowledge base is immense, and doubly so in astral matters. If Farnese is in fact headed for Guts, then she might be putting herself and everyone else at risk instead of helping them out. That's because there's no guarantee Guts will even want to be tamed again. The Black Swordsman's Beast of Darkness is off its leash. It burst through its chains in chapter 373, and there is no telling what will happen if Guts is put back into the Berserker armor. Farnese might as well sign off on his death certificate, because if she can't control him, then there is no hope for anyone. Not the trolls, not the soldiers, not Silat, Rakshas, or anyone else. The only thing that would be capable of standing in the way of his malice is a God Hand member, and unfortunately for him, one seems to be on her way. What does the opening of Qliphoth mean? Is Slan going to appear in the next chapter? The fact that Farnese recognizes the manifesting astral portal as a gateway to Qliphoth can only mean one thing to us. Slan is the God Hand member who's about to show up in the story. This is based off of the fact that she specifically recognizes Qliphoth as being her personal chosen layer of the astral world to dwell within, and she proves it by mass spawning trolls and ogres, kind of like what's happening in the manga right now. Moreover, Slan has a definite interest in Guts, and a somewhat recognizable motive for attacking the Kushan Empire. As Qliphoth, her kinsman, Femto has worked incredibly hard to turn the world into a place where Falconia becomes the only safe haven for humans. The God Hand seems to want to farm human souls to further augment their own powers. Everything Qliphoth has done since he returned, the burning of the Spirit Tree Forest, the centralizing the flow of all spiritual energy through Falconia, the spirit liberation rituals, that is actually sending souls to the abyss. Everything serves only one overall purpose, and that is increasing the God Hand's power and influence over the world. When Fantasia was triggered, we saw Ubik, Conrad, Slan, and Void's advent, but we never saw where they took form, if they took form, or how the deeper layers of the astral world were going to be represented in this new merger, seeing as all four of their chosen Sephira lie quite deep within one's mind. If the astral portal that's opening is actually Qliphoth, then it's pretty much guaranteed that we'll be seeing Slan next, because she's the one who will pose the greatest existential question to Guts. The last time they met, she tried tempting him into using the Behelit, but it didn't work. This time, it just might, and that's when all hope will truly be lost. The opening of Qliphoth means that the other God Hand members were simply biding their time before showing their hand. Rakshas died when Rickett blasted him with the Super Blicky. He himself was confused at his resurrection, but once he saw where he was, he readjusted to his God hand-given mission. He didn't question things any further because he figured that one of the guardian angels brought him back, and he was completely fine with that, so long as he got to kill Silat himself and received a crack at the Falcon's mug. Slan, being the mother of darkness, might have pulled Rakshas's soul out of the dragon path and placed it in Qliphoth, where he was waiting to be used at the opportune moment. That moment is now, and keeping everyone tied down until Slan arrives seems to be his primary mission. Apart from wanting to convert Guts and crush any human resistance to Femto's plans, Slan might have also come to the Empire to destroy their spiritual center of power, if it exists in the first place, and we've explained why she would want to do that in several videos. But if you guys have any other questions, feel free to post them in the comments below, because marvelous verdict. That's all we've got for you guys today. Berserk 379 has been highly anticipated since Studio Gaga turned up the gears with Rakshas's revival. Personally, we don't think we will get to see all of Slan in it. Like, we will be told she's coming, but only see like one tendril of the bunch she calls her hair. But overall, we do think that this is the trajectory that things will take. Having said that, we want to know your thoughts and want you guys to like, share and subscribe as usual, so we can hit up this Valentine season like the strugglers we are. We'll see you guys in the next one, and until then, just keep struggling, my dudes.